I remember the exact moment my son clasped it onto my wrist. He was smiling in that wide, easy way he used to smile when he was a boy. And I felt something warm move through my chest, the way it always did when Daniel looked genuinely happy. He said it was a copper magnetic bracelet, that it would help with the arthritis in my hands, that he'd read about it online and ordered it specially. It had a small engraved plate on the outside. To Dad, with love, and I turned my wrist over once, admiring it, and told him it was the nicest thing anyone had given me in years. I had no idea, standing in my own kitchen on that Father's Day afternoon, that the bracelet would nearly kill me. My name is Arthur Calloway. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a high school principal in Columbus, Ohio, and I retired 3 years ago to the house my late wife Eleanor and I bought in 1987. It's a 3-bedroom colonial with a yard that needs more attention than my knees allow these days. But I love it the way you love something that holds the memory of your whole life inside its walls. Eleanor's roses still come back every May, stubborn and beautiful, and sometimes I stand at the kitchen window just to watch them. Daniel is my son. He's 38. He and his wife Claire moved back to Columbus about 2 years before all of this happened, after a business venture in Phoenix didn't work out the way they'd planned. They bought a house about 8 miles from mine, and at first I was glad to have them close. I helped them with the down payment $60,000 that I told myself was an early part of their inheritance, nothing to be repaid. Claire was polite and organized and always sent thank you notes on real stationery. Daniel seemed steadier with her around. I told myself I approved of the life they were building. My daughter Rebecca lives in Portland. She's younger than Daniel by 4 years and she works as a physical therapist. She's the one who calls me every Sunday without fail, who remembers that I take my coffee black and that I don't like being sent articles about retirement communities. Rebecca has always been the one who noticed things. The bracelet went on my wrist in June. By August, I was exhausted in a way that felt different from ordinary tiredness. I'd wake up after 8 hours of sleep and feel like I hadn't slept at all. My appetite dropped. Some mornings I sat at the kitchen table and couldn't quite remember why I'd come downstairs. I told myself it was the heat, that I was getting older, that 64 wasn't what it used to be. By September, my hair had started thinning. Not dramatically, not all at once, but I noticed it in the shower drain and in the mirror. My hands felt strange, a low, persistent tingling that came and went without reason. My doctor ran a standard blood panel and told me my iron was slightly low. He recommended a supplement and told me to come back in 3 months. I went home and took the iron pills and kept wearing the bracelet. Daniel called me every few days during this time. He asked how I was feeling, said I sounded tired, asked if I was eating properly. He started coming over more than usual, sometimes with Claire, sometimes alone. He helped me rake the yard in October. He fixed a leaking faucet I'd been ignoring. I appreciated it. I told Rebecca during one of our Sunday calls that Daniel was stepping up, that maybe the years of distance between us were finally closing. Rebecca was quiet for a moment when I said that. Then she said, "That's good, Dad. I'm glad." But her voice had a particular quality that I didn't examine closely enough at the time. She came to visit in November, over Thanksgiving. She was the first person who looked at me with genuine alarm rather than polite concern. She said I looked like I'd lost 15 pounds. She sat across from me at dinner and watched me with the focused attention she probably gives her patients. And after Daniel and Claire had gone home that night, she sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Dad, something is wrong. This isn't just getting older. This is something specific." I told her about the blood tests, the iron, the supplements. She nodded slowly. She asked me when the symptoms had started. I thought about it and said around August. She asked me what had changed in my life around that time. I thought about it again. I said nothing, really, just the summer heat. I turned my wrist over as I talked, an unconscious habit I'd developed, rubbing the bracelet the way you rub a worry stone. Rebecca looked at my wrist. She didn't say anything right then, but I saw her eyes settle on it. She stayed 4 days. On the day before she flew home, she drove me to a pharmacy across town to pick up a prescription, and while I was waiting at the counter, she asked the pharmacist, a heavyset man named Roy, who'd been working that counter for years, The kind of pharmacist who actually looks at you when you come in, she asked him, almost casually, whether he'd ever seen anything unusual about copper bracelets, causing skin reactions. Roy looked at my wrist when she said it. He leaned slightly forward. He asked if he could look more closely. I held out my arm. He didn't touch the bracelet. He looked at the skin underneath it, at the edge where the metal met my wrist, at the faint, grayish discoloration that I had honestly stopped noticing. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in a careful, level voice, that what he was seeing on my skin didn't look like a standard copper reaction. He said it looked more consistent with heavy metal exposure. He said it very quietly. He said I should take the bracelet off and I should see a specialist. And he looked at Rebecca when he said it rather than at me. I drove home without the bracelet in the car. Rebecca had wrapped it in a plastic bag from her purse and held it on her lap the entire drive. Neither of us spoke much. I kept thinking about the word Daniel had used when he gave it to me specially. He'd ordered it specially. Rebecca went home the next morning, but she didn't stop. I didn't know the half of what she was doing from Portland. She found a toxicologist at OHSU who explained that thallium was one of the heavy metals most commonly missed in standard blood panels because doctors simply didn't think to look for it. She learned that thallium acetate could be embedded in a slow-release compound along the inner lining of a bracelet, the part that rested flush against the skin. She learned that the symptoms fatigue, hair loss, neurological tingling, cognitive fog typically appeared 6 to 8 weeks after consistent daily exposure began. I had started wearing the bracelet in June. My symptoms began in August. She called me 10 days after Thanksgiving and told me all of this slowly and carefully, the way she must have learned to deliver difficult news to patients. She said she needed me to get a specific blood test for thallium and that she was going to send me the name and code to give my doctor. She said she loved me. She said she was probably wrong and she hoped more than anything she was wrong. She was not wrong. The test came back 2 days later. My thallium levels were nearly 3 times the threshold considered dangerous for chronic exposure. My doctor called me himself, not his nurse, which told me everything before he said a single word. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the medical building for a long time after that call. I want to be honest about what I felt in those minutes, because it's the part people find hardest to understand. I didn't feel rage. I felt something quieter and far worse than rage. I kept seeing Daniel's face on Father's Day. That wide, easy smile, the way he'd held my wrists steady while he fastened the clasp. I kept asking myself the question I suspect every parent in my situation asks. When did I stop being his father and become his obstacle? I need to explain why I didn't call the police the moment I sat in that parking lot. I know it seems like the obvious thing to do. A rational person calls the police. But here is what I was thinking. I had a blood test and a bracelet in a plastic bag. I did not have a single piece of evidence connecting the bracelet to my son. For all a detective would know, I'd bought the bracelet myself at a gas station. Daniel would say he'd never seen it before. Claire would express concern and make tea. I needed more, and I needed to understand, before I destroyed everything, whether my son had done this himself, or whether something else was happening that I didn't yet have the full shape of. I called Rebecca and told her I needed 2 weeks. She argued with me. I asked her to trust me. She made me promise to call her every single night, and I did. I called Daniel 3 days later and told him I hadn't been feeling well, that the doctor had found some irregularities in my blood work, and asked if he could come over. He arrived within an hour. He sat on the couch across from me with his hands folded and his eyes doing something I recognized then as performing concern rather than feeling it. I watched him carefully, in a way I never had before. He asked me what the doctor had said. I told him the doctor was running more tests. He said he hoped it was nothing serious. He said he'd been worried about me. He said it all correctly. But there was something underneath the words, not relief. Not the thing you'd feel if the person you loved told you they might be sick, something that looked more like calculation. I thought about what Rebecca had said about Claire researching thallium. Not Daniel. Claire. 2 days later, when Daniel was at work, I called Claire and asked her to meet me for coffee. I chose a place I knew, and I arrived early. I set my phone on the table with the voice memo app running before she walked in. I want to be clear that this decision recording the conversation was deliberate and I thought about it carefully. I wasn't going to confront someone who may have tried to poison me without a record of what they said. I was 64 years old and I was not stupid. Claire sat down and ordered a latte with the brisk efficiency she brought to everything. She asked how I was feeling. I told her the doctors had found heavy metal toxicity. I watched her face. She was good. She barely moved. But there was a flicker, a half-second adjustment in her expression that wasn't grief and wasn't surprise. It was something closer to recalibration. I told her they thought it might be from a bracelet I'd been wearing. I held up my wrist to show her it was gone. She looked at my bare wrist and said nothing. I said, "Claire, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you do something to that bracelet before Daniel gave it to me?" She was quiet for 4 seconds. I counted. Then she said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Arthur." I said, "I have a blood test showing thallium poisoning. I have the bracelet in a lab being tested right now." That was partially true. The bracelet was being tested. I had sent it to the university lab Rebecca had found. I'm going to know exactly what was in that bracelet within the week. I'm giving you the chance to talk to me first. The 4 seconds the second time were different. Longer. Her hands moved around her coffee cup. She said, very quietly, "We needed the money, Arthur. Daniel's business debts were worse than you knew. We were going to lose the house. I thought by the time anything happened, it would just look like your health declining. You were already 60. I thought." She stopped. She looked at the table. She said, in a voice that had gone almost completely flat, "I didn't want you to suffer. I thought it would be peaceful." I have replayed that recording many times since then. Each time I hear her say peaceful, I feel the same thing, not fury. Not the dramatic red wave of cinematic betrayal. Just a profound sadness, like standing at the edge of something and understanding finally how deep it is. Daniel had known less than I feared, and more than I hoped. He had known Claire was handling things, her phrase. He told the police he hadn't asked questions, because part of him hadn't wanted to know the answers. Whether that is cowardice or complicity, I still do not have a clean answer to, and I'm not certain the law's answer and my answer need to be the same. I called Rebecca from the parking lot of the coffee shop with the recording still on my phone. She was silent for a long moment when I finished telling her. Then she said, "Dad, you need to call the police right now." She stayed on the phone with me while I did. Claire was arrested 2 days later. The lab results came back the following week, confirming a sustained-release thallium compound embedded in a silicone liner inside the bracelet. The compound was sophisticated enough that the toxicologist said it had required research to design. Claire had a chemistry degree from 20 years ago that none of us had ever thought about. Daniel was charged as well. The prosecutors argued that his willful ignorance constituted complicity under Ohio law. His attorney is still sorting through what that means for him. Some days I think about the Father's Day he stood in my kitchen smiling, and I cannot reconcile that man with what followed. I understand that people contain contradictions. I understand that debt and desperation can bend a person in directions they never imagined. I understand all of this intellectually, and it does not make it hurt less. Rebecca flew back to Columbus in December. She stayed with me through the holidays and into January. She is the reason I am here to tell this story. She noticed the bracelet the way she notices everything, quietly and without drama, from a place of genuine love rather than performance. I have told her this. I don't say it enough. I am recovering. The thallium clears slowly, but it clears. My hair is growing back. My hands have mostly stopped tingling. My doctor tells me there may be some lasting neurological effects, and he wants me to do some testing in the spring. I go for walks in the morning now, and I pay attention to how strong my legs feel, and most days they feel strong enough. I removed Eleanor's roses from my Christmas cards list because I have been sending them to the wrong people for 3 years, and that is the kind of thing grief makes you do. I put Rebecca at the top. I want to say something about forgiveness because people will ask. I have not forgiven what was done to me in the sense of releasing it completely, of deciding it carries no weight. I don't believe that is what forgiveness actually means, despite what the word is often made to mean in the kind of stories people tell about things like this. What I have done is decided that the poison was something that happened to me and is not who I am. Claire made a choice that she will answer for in court, and in whatever private accounting comes after. Daniel made a choice to look away from something he should have looked at directly, and he will answer for that too, in court and in every future conversation we have or do not have. I have not cut Daniel out of my life. I have made it very clear what the conditions are for a relationship going forward, and I have held those conditions without apology. He is allowed to call me. He is not allowed to assume I will answer. There is something I once read about forgiveness being a door you open, not a bridge you rebuild, and I think that is roughly right. The door is open. The bridge takes time and materials, and I will be the one who decides when and whether we have enough of both. My house still has Eleanor's roses in the yard. They will come back in May, stubborn and beautiful. I will stand at the kitchen window and watch them. I will drink my coffee black, and I will call Rebecca on Sunday, and I will feel, underneath everything, the particular gratitude of a man who came very close to not being here and found himself still here. That is the part the bracelet didn't account for. The part no one planning a quiet, peaceful ending ever quite accounts for the specific, persistent fact of the people who love you and are paying attention. I take nothing for granted anymore. Not the roses, not the coffee, not the Sunday calls. Not the body that carries me from room to room, healing slowly and still going. Not a single ordinary morning. I wake up now before the alarm, and I lie there for a moment before I get up, just to feel the day beginning. Just to know that it is. That is enough. That is more than enough.